General Hospital will reveal exciting details on Friday, February 7, 2025. First, the conference room was filled with tension as Jordan and Anna reviewed the latest reports on Sidwell. His name had surfaced once again, and with it came a series of alarming events. He was no ordinary criminal. His calculated moves and ability to remain hidden made him one of the most elusive threats they had ever faced. The latest incident, a devastating fire at Sonny's penthouse, was too much of a coincidence. Given Sidwell's history, it was clear that this was not an accident but a deliberate act meant to send a message. His previous actions against Lucky and Isaiah had already proven his ruthless nature, and now, with his return, the stakes were higher than ever. As Jordan studied the compiled data, it became evident that Sidwell's influence stretched far beyond what they had initially believed. Every connection, every financial trail hinted at a much larger scheme in motion. He never acted impulsively, his crimes were always part of a well-thought-out plan. The fire was likely just a warning or a distraction, a move designed to shift attention while he orchestrated something far more dangerous. The lack of direct evidence against him was frustrating, but the patterns of destruction that followed his presence were impossible to ignore. If they didn't act soon, more lives would be at risk. Anna examined the board covered in surveillance images and reports, searching for the missing piece that could lead them closer to uncovering his next move. Sidwell had managed to slip through the cracks of the system for too long, using fear and manipulation to stay ahead. His return suggested that he was confident, perhaps even emboldened, which made him even more unpredictable. The question was no longer whether he would strike again, but when and where. Identifying his next target was crucial, but the challenge lay in outmaneuvering a man who was always one step ahead. Determined to put an end to his reign of terror, Jordan and Anna knew they had little time to waste. Sidwell was a master of deception, but this time, they would be ready. Every lead, every anomaly in his movements needed to be scrutinized. The fire at Sonny's penthouse was only the beginning, a sign of something far greater looming on the horizon. They had to move fast, or risk letting Sidwell slip away once again, leaving only destruction in his wake. Second, Laura had issued a stern warning to Drew, recognizing the reckless path he was heading down. His decision to engage in high-stakes gambling had already led to Cody being pulled into dangerous territory with Selena, a woman known for her cunning and ruthless control over the underground betting scene. Drew's choices weren't just about risk, they carried real consequences, ones that could place others in harm's way. His recent actions mirrored the same impulsiveness that had marked his approach toward Willow, a pattern of behavior that suggested he was making moves without fully considering the fallout. Cody, drawn into the gamble under Drew's influence, now found himself at the mercy of Selena's manipulations. She was not someone who made deals without ensuring she had the upper hand. Every game, every bet, and every agreement carried hidden dangers, and Cody, whether he realized it or not, was stepping deeper into a trap he might not be able to escape. Laura had seen this kind of recklessness before and knew that once Selena had a hold on someone, getting out was never simple. The situation was growing increasingly precarious. Drew, either blinded by his own arrogance or unwilling to acknowledge the risks, failed to see the gravity of what he had set into motion. Cody, caught between loyalty and self-preservation, was now a pawn in a game he had never intended to play. If Drew continued down this path, the consequences would be far worse than just losing a few rounds of gambling. Selena's power extended far beyond the poker table, and once she had control, she never let go easily. Laura understood the danger, but whether Drew would listen to her warning was another matter entirely. His inability to recognize the harm he was causing, to himself and to those around him, was setting the stage for a much larger disaster. Cody was already in too deep, and if Drew didn't change course soon, there might be no way to pull him back before it was too late. Third, Sonny arrived in Los Angeles with Natalia, seeking clarity about his worsening heart condition. The medical examination only confirmed his deepest fears. His health had deteriorated far more than he had hoped. The reality of his situation weighed heavily on him, forcing him to acknowledge that he could no longer afford to ignore the inevitable. If he wanted any chance at survival, he needed to step back and focus on treatment. But in his world, stepping back was never that simple. The moment weakness was exposed, vultures would circle, waiting to exploit any sign of vulnerability. Recognizing the dangers that came with his condition, Sonny knew he had to act decisively. His organization needed stability, and he needed a successor who could hold everything together in his absence. The decision was not one to be taken lightly, as the wrong choice could lead to chaos, betrayal, or worse. However, before any plans could be set into motion, secrecy was paramount. If word got out that Sonny was gravely ill, it would invite trouble from every enemy lurking in the shadows. The timing was critical, and trust was a luxury he could not afford. As he processed the gravity of his situation, Natalia remained by his side, offering support but knowing better than to press him for answers. She understood that Sonny's world was built on control, strategy, and power, and any misstep now could cost him more than just his empire, it could cost him his life. There were those who had been waiting for a moment like this, and if they sensed weakness, they would strike without hesitation. The challenge was not just fighting for his health, but also ensuring that the empire he had built did not crumble in his absence. With time running out, Sonny was left with difficult choices to make. He could not allow emotions to cloud his judgment, nor could he let paranoia dictate his actions. His next move had to be calculated, precise, and, most of all, secret. The battle ahead was not just against his failing heart, but against the unseen enemies who were waiting for him to fall. South, Nina had reached her breaking point with Drew, watching as his reckless actions continued to drag Willow into a dangerous spiral. His selfish decisions and underhanded tactics had already caused enough damage, and Nina was determined to stop him before things got worse. She knew Willow had a fragile heart, still healing from past betrayals, and if Drew remained in her life, he would only bring more turmoil. There was no room for hesitation, Nina had to act quickly and decisively. But she couldn't do it alone. Turning to Lucas for help was not a decision she made lightly, but it was necessary. He had the medical expertise, the credibility, and, more importantly, a deep concern for Willow's well-being. Nina trusted that Lucas would understand the urgency of the situation and help her find a way to separate Willow from Drew's influence. She knew that if Willow remained entangled with Drew, the consequences would be devastating. His manipulations were becoming more apparent, and Nina feared that the longer Willow stayed by his side, the harder it would be for her to break free. The challenge, however, was handling the situation delicately. If they moved too aggressively, Willow might resist, blinded by whatever hold Drew had over her. Nina understood that any misstep could push Willow further into his grasp, making it even more difficult to pull her away. That was why Lucas was the perfect ally, he had a way of reasoning with people without making them feel cornered. Together, they needed to create a path for Willow to see the truth for herself, without forcing her into a decision she wasn't ready to make. Nina knew time was running out. If she didn't intervene now, Willow could sink even deeper into a toxic dynamic that would leave her vulnerable to heartbreak and manipulation. She refused to stand by and watch that happen. With Lucas by her side, Nina was ready to do whatever it took to ensure Willow's safety, even if it meant exposing Drew's darkest secrets to finally set her free. Finally, Lulu was about to face one of the most intense confrontations of her life, an encounter that could change everything and set the stage for an even darker turn of events. As she gathered her thoughts, piecing together the fragments of information she had collected since waking from her coma, she found herself drawn into a tangled web of secrets, betrayals, and hidden agendas. She had sensed that something was off, that certain figures in Port Charles were operating in the shadows, concealing truths that could unravel the power structure of the city. But she hadn't expected Jocelyn to be the one holding the key to it all. Their meeting was anything but coincidental. Jocelyn, still reeling from everything she had uncovered, had been searching for someone who could understand the gravity of what she knew. When she crossed paths with Lulu, the tension was immediate, but so was the unspoken understanding that this conversation was going to change everything. With each revelation, Jocelyn laid out the pieces, clues she had gathered, whispers she had overheard, connections she had traced back to a single name, Cyrus. His influence had never fully disappeared, and now, with new chaos unfolding in Port Charles, it was clear that he had been pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Or at least, he had been, until something went terribly wrong. As Lulu listened, the weight of the information settled heavily upon her. Cyrus had too many enemies to count, and if someone had decided to take matters into their own hands, it wouldn't have been surprising. But what Jocelyn had discovered hinted at something far more complex. This wasn't just about retaliation or revenge. There was a larger game at play, one that had been set in motion long before anyone realized. Lulu, determined to uncover the full truth, now found herself at the center of a mystery far bigger than she had anticipated. With tension rising and more questions than answers, the possibility of a deadly conspiracy loomed over them. If Cyrus had truly been murdered, then the real question remained, who had killed him, and what were they trying to hide? Lulu now had no choice but to follow the trail wherever it led, even if it meant stepping into the heart of danger itself.